This is our Lotus pond, and it is the jewel in the crown. It is the masterpiece and the centerpiece in New Hermopolis. It is what I regard as the main achievement, although the whole of New Hermopolis was a real struggle, and by all measures and all standards is an achievement in its own right, but the Lotus Pond is the main achievement. It really gives me life. It does. It does. It symbolizes regeneration, rebirth, and becoming. So the ancient Egyptians, being and becoming, were all part and parcel of the same thing. You don't become a person without a continuous process of becomings. So the becoming is series of becomings, and this series of becomings originate from the very being. So being and becoming is one and the same thing, and that's why I'm continually becoming, because I've changed my life. I had a life of a medical doctor, a psychiatrist. I lived in another country. I learned a lot. I gained experiences and everything. But then I built this place. I look after it. It has been a struggle. So you are continually metamorphosing. You are continually re-emerging in a new form. You are continually giving yourself the opportunity of rebirth, of regeneration. So it is for me the hope. It is the hope. And it is the hope for humanity. And that's why the lotus, the Egyptian blue lotus, symbolizes hope. I'm Egyptian. I was born in Egypt and brought up in Cairo. But my father's ancestors come from this part of Egypt, which is a precious part of Egypt. It is Middle Egypt, and we will talk about that in a minute. I grew up in Cairo, and I was educated in schools in Cairo, and then went to the medical school and graduated from the medical school in 1975, Cairo University. And then I left to England. And there are so many reasons for leaving to England, because I wanted actually to become more learned, more educated, more experienced, more capable of doing what I really wanted to do for Egypt. From the moment I actually built this place, I tried very hard to get the lotus. It was a primary goal of mine, but it was almost extinct. It's non-existent. It's extremely difficult to get hold of. But I managed in the end to find some rhizomes, and I started with only 10 rhizomes, 10 flowers, and it grew. That was 7 years ago. But the place has been built almost 15 years ago. We actually don't know how abundant it was. It probably was not as abundant as people think. And very much like the papyrus, it was also precious, because nothing that is abundant is precious. So if the ancient Egyptians almost worshipped it, cherished it so much and valued it so much, it couldn't have been just commonplace. It must have been very precious. And I don't think that it grow on the Nile. It grow in certain areas because it requires a stagnant water. And the river, yes, doesn't have the same waves and the same movement like the sea, but it has movement. And you have to have mud. Of course, there is mud in the river bed, but yeah. So I really don't think that the notion that it was abundant and everywhere and that it is very true. I personally contest it or debate it. But the reason why it no longer exists, there are a number of things we can always say. Climate, although of course it loves heat, it is in its best glory in the hottest months of the year. So I wouldn't really say the climate is the reason, because Egypt is still hot. It was hot and still hot. I think there is a myth, and I don't know if it is true or not, that the lotus, the Egyptian blue lotus, is angry with the Egyptians or cross with them because they did not take good care of this amazing civilization. They didn't look after it well. There is a prophecy in the Hermetic manuscripts, in the Hermetica, that clearly says that Egypt, that there will be a time when the Egyptians will forget about their past, will not know about the good things that happened in their former years. Their sacred things will become non-sacred. The country will be giving value to the cheap thing and not the precious thing. And the thief and the one who has no principles and everything will walk free, and the honest will be like a beggar. So they're quite a lot, and Egypt will be wedded, and there will be tears, and so this prophecy, which is really towards the end of, because the Hermetica, although it could be much older than we think, but roughly it was the last phase of the Egyptian civilization. By the time Egypt started to have foreign invaders and foreign control, and then it ended up with the Greeks and then the Romans and then the Arabs and everything. So so Egypt lost its roots, but the roots are there. And as I mentioned before, as Tot said, he engraved the words of wisdom in stone and in the sacred alphabet, which is the hieroglyphs, because there will be a time when people come to life, the heaven will birth in new people who will appreciate this kind of thing. And I hope I'm one of them, and I hope all of you who are interested are one of those people who appreciate the wisdom of the elders and the wisdom of our ancestors, because they are ancestors to all humanity, in fact. Because, as I mentioned as well, Egypt saw itself as the center of the cosmos, the temple of the world. So it is, and the mirror of heaven on earth. So it didn't see itself as Egyptians and non-Egyptians and all that. Maybe later, when there were many foreign invaders who looked down upon their worship, who didn't value the things they value, who didn't hold the principles that this civilization had or their way of life, they started to feel they are different from that. So it is, and the prophecy goes on, but with all these very, very sad things. But in the end, it says a time will come when everything will be overturned and Egypt will restore its grandeur again and its value for humanity. There will be a time when people will fight corruption, will fight ugliness, will deal with destruction by construction and building and creation. Behind us is the sacred tree of Egypt, the sycamore tree, the sacred mother that represents Nut, Hathor, and Isis. And we see it on many murals depicted as a lady coming out of the tree and giving water and food to the deceased. So it is another very symbolic thing, very much like the lotus. So the sycamore is sacred to the ancient Egyptians and sacred and dear to me, very much like the blue lotus. Oh.